Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, working their way through spring practice, and you're kind of getting to that point where guys are starting to separate themselves, really emerge and put a stamp on what they are going to mean to this Clemson team heading into that 2024 year. Want to talk about some of those players and kind of largely talk about what that means for this Clemson team heading into next year. Really excited about this one and really excited about this Clemson team in general. A lot of the Clemson fans kind of already know my thoughts on this. This is a team that I feel like the national media likes to write off because they're not the team that's going out into the transfer portal and making these flashy moves like teams like Miami, teams like Florida State. And because of that, I feel like not a lot of people are talking about how dangerous this Clemson team can be, not only in the ACC, but in the college football playoffs as well. I want to talk about some of these players that are emerging. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the Clemson Tiger fans. You guys give a ton of feedback, a ton of support in the comment section. I learn a ton from you guys. I love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, but much more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section as well. Some of these players that are kind of piquing your interest and that are standing out for you. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with by far the biggest storyline for this Clemson team. I've kind of been on record, very vocal about this. This Clemson team can be extremely dangerous if they get this passing attack off the ground heading into 2024. And a lot of that falls onto the shoulders of Cade Klubnik, who kind of my biggest takeaway throughout spring practice so far is Garrett Riley talking about Clay Klubnik, not only as a leader of this Clemson offense, but also utilizing his dynamic skill set in this offense. You talk about elite traits of offensive coordinators. I think it starts with identifying the talent that you have on your team and then letting them go be put in positions that they can really use that talent. And Cade Klubnik, one of the things that he brings to the table that not a lot of other quarterbacks in college football have is elite athleticism, elite ability to throw on the run. You're kind of hearing Garrett Riley encourage Cade and start using Cade as more of a dynamic quarterback, a guy that you're not necessarily going to run him 20 times a game, but go let him use his athleticism, let him extend plays, let him break the pocket. Because again, when you go back to the 2023 film, a lot of Cade's best reps were coming as a dynamic thrower that can get out of the pocket, use his athleticism. And I think Garrett Riley going into year two is trying to get Cade in more positions where not only he's more comfortable in, but where he can succeed, and kind of looking at his skill sets and saying, we got to put you in spots that are going to allow you to be most successful. And again, this passing attack, it's easy to kind of dunk on it from 2023. You rewind 12 months ago, this was a new offense with Garrett Riley, with a new starting quarterback in Cade Klubnik, with two healthy scholarship wide receivers going into the spring game last year. I think one of my big takeaways, not only Cade standing out, but this wide receiver room being healthy, getting those vital reps with Cade Klubnik in this Garrett Riley offense throughout this spring practice. I expect this passing attack to take massive strides in 2024. Next player I want to talk about, a guy that I am extremely excited about. You got TJ Moore coming in the summer. Brian Wesco already on campus for Clemson, already making plays for this Clemson program. And this is a guy that, when you talk about playmakers on the outside, probably something we just didn't see enough of from Clemson in 2023. I think less due to the personnel and more due to the injuries. Brian Wesco is a guy that not only can win vertically down the field with elite speed, elite playmaking ability down the field. This was also a guy that not many wide receivers in that 2024 class were more dynamic with the football in their hands than Brian Wesco. I look at guys like Brian Wesco, like Antonio Williams, who is healthy going into 2024, even a guy like Tink, who sounds like he's standing out, and kind of looking for, all right, what wide receivers are really going to stand out and be kind of playmakers for this Clemson team. Brian Wesco sounds like a guy that is going to be playing a lot for Clemson. Again, I think TJ Moore, it's not going to take him long to come in during fall camp and really kind of assert himself as a guy in this Clemson wide receiver room. I look at this wide receiver room and say, there are a ton of players who have a lot of talent. I think it's a young room, but I think it's a very talented room. A lot of those guys going into year 2 in that Garrett Riley offense, it's a numbers game. I think you have enough numbers there. Now, what are the guys that are going to stand out and kind of really assert themselves as the playmakers for this Clemson offense? Brian Wesco certainly sounds like a guy. They're moving Antonio Williams to the boundary, which I think is massive. You ask me who the best wide receiver when healthy is for this Clemson program, I'm probably pointing at Antonio Williams. And I think that's another really good move by Garrett Riley, where you look at the slot wide receivers for Clemson and say, hey, we got a lot of really good slot wide receivers. We need a little bit more talent on the boundary. Getting Antonio Williams out on the boundary, giving him a little bit more space to operate, I think that makes a lot of sense for this Clemson offense. And at the end of the day, you can talk scheme all you want. You also have to have the players on the field, and having a guy like Antonio Williams kick out to the boundary just allows you to get more playmakers and elite playmakers on the field for this Clemson offense. Last guy in offense that I want to talk about is Keith Adams Jr., who I think one of our bigger question marks for this Clemson team was, what is the depth at running back going to look like? No one's got any questions about that running back one for Clemson. Phil Maffa going to have a phenomenal year, I think, for the Clemson Tigers. But who is going to emerge as kind of that running back too? And it sounds like Keith Adams Jr. kind of is that guy, 5'10", 220 pounds, a very thick lower half. You talk about Phil Maffa, Keith Adams Jr. having 25, 30 carries combined a game. That is going to wear down a lot of defenses in the ACC. Keith Adams Jr. stepping up, kind of asserting himself as that running back too, I think is very exciting for Clemson fans. Now, going over to the defensive side of the football, I think the biggest story here is kicking Peter Woods out to that edge defender role. And why I say that's so big for this Clemson program is you look at the inside of this Clemson defensive line, it is one of the deepest and one of the most talented interior defensive lines that you see in the country. And I think kind of going to the same conversation we had at the wide receiver spot is we got to look at this team and say, how can we get all our best players on the field at the same time? And I think that would include kicking out Peter Woods to that edge spot. You're looking at TJ Parker, Peter Woods as being one of, if not the best edge rushing duo that you've seen in the country. Peter Woods already down to 295 pounds. I think that's a really good sign for Clemson. You go back to Peter Woods coming out of high school, he even said it himself, this was the plan. He's a guy that you bring in that has phenomenal position versatility, played a lot on the edge at his high school ranks. He certainly has the athleticism to do so. And I think this kind of goes into Dabo Swinney, this defensive staff, saying, how can we get all our best players on the field at the same time? Peter Woods moving to that edge position, you're looking at an elite Clemson defensive line. Make no mistakes about that. Next player I want to give a quick shout out to is Wade Woodaz. And we just said this Clemson defensive line might be one of the better units that we see in the country. This Clemson linebacker room is just about as talented as any other linebacker room you see in the country as well. Obviously, Barrett Carter coming back. You get Sammy Brown in as a true freshman. Wade Woodaz is an extremely exciting linebacker. I thought he played phenomenal against Kentucky in that bowl game. This is your modern day linebacker. You want your linebackers to be able to operate in space, go sideline to sideline. Wade Woodaz, coming out of high school, played a lot of safety. He is very comfortable dropping back in coverage, being an athlete in space. You look at Wade Woodaz, Barrett Carter, Sammy Brown playing behind an elite Clemson defensive line. These guys are going to have a lot of space to operate and a lot of opportunity to really be playmakers for this Clemson defense. Wade Woodaz emerging, I think, is massive, because if he kind of becomes that guy for Clemson next to Barrett Carter, you're looking at a Clemson linebacker room that, again, one of the more talented groups in the country. Last guy we got to talk about, the pick six in the scrimmage yesterday, Khalil Barnes. And you got to give Dabo Swinney such a massive shout out in that 20. I mean, you talk about fans sometimes getting worked up about the recruiting rankings and where Clemson came in according to 24/7 Sports. Dabo Swinney doesn't give a damn about that. Dabo Swinney wants guys that he knows that he can develop and guys that he knows can play at the college level, regardless of what their 24/7 Sports recruiting ranking was. Khalil Barnes was just one of those elite defensive backs that kind of came in as 3 stars out of high school that have really emerged as absolute dudes for this Clemson unit. this is a secondary that you lose some really top-end talent, Nate Wiggins, Andrew Mukuba to the transfer portal. You take a look at that youth that played last year late. Yeah, you saw some growing pains at times, but you also saw a young defensive back room that was phenomenally talented, a lot of which are only going into their second or third year of college football. Khalil Barnes, I think, leading that pack. This is a Clemson defensive back room that, again, young but extremely talented, playing behind probably one of the best front sevens that we see in all of college football. Got no questions about the defense. I'm really excited to get into the spring game, watch how this offense looks. And I'll say this, if this offense continues to make some plays against the caliber of defense that they're going up against in practice, that's certainly a good sign. Can't wait for the spring game. We'll obviously watch it, cover it, talk about it after. Appreciate the Clemson fans rocking with the boys again. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support. Would love to hear from y'all in the comments section. And if you do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.